In today's session, we're going to continue on the organizational opportunities, stories from the front lines. This session is about understanding need for change. So I was working with a company. They came to one of my training sessions on operational excellence. They're a contract machining operation that's basically a job shop operation. And the internal resources that came to that training realized that they probably could do things better for the business perspective, but leadership didn't think that there was a need for change because leadership didn't come to the training. So we had this internal conflict. And so I was working with them to try to break this internal conflict and get consensus and alignment within the company. So we're trying to get everyone to agree that, yes, we do need to change, and then alignment on what can we actually do as an organization to improve. So that's the background of the story. So what I saw was an internal conflict within this company. And if you're not familiar with the conflict cloud that was developed with the thinking processes through the theory of constraints, the conflict cloud is a way to verbalize a conflict internal to the company. So we have here on the left-hand side an objective we're trying to achieve. There's two needs to satisfy that objective, and there's actions that are taken to satisfy those needs. And typically those actions are in conflict with one another. And then there's assumptions here between the needs and the actions that basically tells us why the assumption that the people have that why this action is going to achieve this need. And so the conflict that this company had was, first of all, they wanted to have a successful business now and in the future. So it's not only meeting the current needs, but also having longevity. So of course, the two needs are, first, the company must meet the company's short-term objectives. And the second need was we must ensure company longevity. Now, on the side of the meeting the company's short-term objectives, there was like, okay, things are going okay. Don't upset the apple cart, so let's maintain status quo. So don't change. Let's continue on the path that we're doing because we're able to meet our objectives. Yes, maybe not as best as we can, but we're meeting our objectives. And then second, on the ensuring company longevity, we must improve business outcomes. We must change. So you can see these two are in conflict with one another in this company because some people said don't change, some people said change, and there was this conflict. Now what we want to do is we want to raise the assumptions why people believe maintaining status quo is going to meet their company objectives and why improving business outcome is going to ensure longevity. So the reason for the assumption behind why maintaining status quo is going to meet the company objectives is that the current business model is sufficient to meet the company objectives. And on the other side, in order to ensure company longevity, we must improve business outcomes because the current business model is not sufficient to ensure longevity. So they had this conflict, and you might see something similar in your organization. So how do we go about breaking this conflict? So the technique that I used was a force field analysis. So the force field analysis looks at first the customer and says, okay, what are the needs of the customer and how well are we satisfying those needs? And first of all, they said the needs of the customer are, lead time is important to them, quality is important to them, reliability. So we give them a date that we actually hit the date, price, and new product introduction because customers had new products that they had to machine on a periodic basis. So what they did is they started to say, okay, let's rank those in terms of importance, and then let's say, how well are we doing on each of those objectives? So first they said lead time from the customer's perspective is about a 3, and they're not doing very well. So they put it as a negative. Next was quality. They said from the customer's perspective, quality was a 4, and they thought they were doing well there. Reliability of hitting the promise dates, they said was a 5 for the customer, and they said they weren't doing well against that one. Price was a 2, and they said they were about equal with their competitors. New product introduction was a 3, and they were also not performing well there. So then I said, okay, now let's look at the company needs, the needs of the business. So what are the needs of the business? And let's do the same thing and rank those. So the first thing I said, well, we need to be profitable. So they said that was a 5. And they actually weren't doing very well on that objective. Second was product quality, again, was a 4. They said they were doing well. Cost control, to be able to manage their costs, was a 4. They weren't doing very well there. Market diversity, so not having all their eggs in one basket, was a 3. They weren't doing well there. And then operational stability, they said, was a 5, and also not doing well there. So we got consensus from the team that, geez, maybe we're not doing as well as we thought we were. Specifically, leadership was involved in this process. So they started to see, geez, maybe things aren't going as well as I thought they were. So that started to get to address the need for change. So if I go back to the conflict cloud, this internal conflict they had, it's like, which one of these assumptions don't we like, or which one of these needs, or which one of these actions don't we like? And it's this one here on the top of maintaining status quo. So what we want to do is we want to invalidate that assumption and saying that the current business model is sufficient to meet the needs. It's actually not sufficient. So to break this conflict cloud without compromise is we want to improve business outcomes and meet the short-term company objectives and ensure longevity that will allow us to have a successful business now and into the future. So what we did is we said, okay, we can achieve and improve the short-term company objectives while ensuring longevity if we go about it from the right perspective. Within the organization, it's important that we get consensus and alignment. So what is consensus? That we achieve general agreement from the group. So I got general agreement from the group that there was a need for change using the force field analysis. Second is alignment, so choosing to get behind a decision so the organization can move forward together as a team. So we didn't come up with the specific actions that we're going to do to achieve those 2 needs, but we got the consensus, and then the next step was to get alignment and understand what actions, what initiatives we're going to do to move the company forward. So what we learned from this is without consensus and alignment, the chance of the organization becoming high performing is very small. If we have people arguing or have conflicts within the organization and we can't agree as a group, we're not going to achieve the objectives. And second, if the organization doesn't agree on a way to evaluate the organization, the internal conflicts won't be resolved. So you need to have a way to objectively analyze the current situation, and that's the basis for resolving the internal conflicts. That's our session for today. Hope you enjoyed the session.